Bicaranya baru satu, Bro.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to welcome all of you, distinguished guests,
Recording in
esteemed
progress.
speaker, Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh, and Professor Ayesha Farooq, and participants from around the world to the GreenThink International Conference on Innovative Interdisciplinary Science for an Inclusive and Sustainable Future. Today's themes: towards resilient societies, the synergy of religion, education, health, science, and technology embodies our collective commitment to shaping more inclusive and sustainable sustainable future. This conference is organized by the Center of International Cooperation, led by its director, Professor Dinia Professor Maila, PhD, and is proudly supported by the Institute of Research and Community Empowerment under the direction of Professor Amelia Fauzia, PhD. We are also extend our gratitude to Universitas Islam Negeri Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, led by our rector, Professor Asef Saifuddin Jahar, PhD, for the unwavering support. We are excited and humbled by the participation of thought leaders and innovators from across the globe. Your contributions through the papers you've submitted will be published by Taylor and Francis, ensuring that your work reaches a wider audience. Let's today let's use today as an opportunity to learn from one another, collaborate, and inspire new ideas. Thank you all for being part of this important event. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the session, second session. We are excited to continue with this session 2, Green Tech and Circular Economy for a Sustainable Future. This session will explore innovative solutions shaping the future of sustainability through the green technologies and circular economies. We are honored to have two distinguished speakers with us today: Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh from Central Queensland University, Australia, Professor Ayesha Farooq from Aligarh Muslim University, India, represented by Ms. Suha Bilkis, PhD. Before we begin, we have prepared a brief video profiles for both our speakers. Let's start with Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh's videos. Thank you for that introduction. Now we will proceed with Professor Ayesha Farooq video profile. Thank you. The session will run from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Jakarta time, and we encourage everyone to actively participate by asking questions through the Zoom platform, or when the Q&A session, you can address the questions directly to the speakers. Without further delay, let's begin with our first speaker, Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh from Central Queensland University, Australia. Associate Professor Chugh, the time is yours.
Thank you, Dzikri. Can I just confirm whether you're able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it clearly.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting at this conference, and good afternoon to all of you, the professors, the organizers. I say it's a pleasure because I'm talking about a topic that is close to my heart, green ICT. And I'm pleased to see the number of participants. I see there's about 88 participants in the room now. And the reason I say I want to focus on that green ICT aspect, because conferences or having virtual conferences also has or reduces our negative environmental impact. And that is something that a lot of conference organizers are now starting to adopt. Obviously, COVID has been the impetus behind all of it. So Dzikri and the organizers, thank you for that introduction earlier on. I am located in Australia. I work as an associate professor in Central Queensland University. My area of interest, I call myself a socio-technologist because I research in the areas of technologies and how society adopts them, and also educational technology. So those are my area of interest. And today's topic, as you will see on the screen, I've called it 50 Shades of Green. Not to remind you of 50 Shades of Gray, but I mean, the reason I wanted to focus on those 50 shades of green is to focus on the green ICT practices in the ICT industry, which aligns very well with the theme of the conference itself, because the focus is on GreenThink, thinking green. But, you know, we tend to think green at an individual level, but I wanted to focus on what the ICT industry is doing in terms of their green management strategies. So in today's session, I'll be outlining an analysis of corporate sustainability claims of ICT companies. For those of you who'd like to connect, that's my LinkedIn profile in your chat screen. Well, obviously there's a QR code, but in the chat screen, I've just posted links to my LinkedIn profile and also to my Google Knowledge panel if you need more information about me. But please feel free to connect and continue that conversation on LinkedIn if you feel. So if there's questions, burning questions, you want to take a screenshot, you want to post it on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. I am quite active on social media as well, because I think it just helps everyone better connect with our audiences. So when we look at the prevalence of ICT in today's environment, we all know that information and communication technologies, or ICT, is becoming more pervasive. But because of its pervasiveness, its environmental footprint is also growing. And that is raising concerns about the sector's sustainability, because that's an issue that we are all grappling with. I mean, I want to give you a staggering thought about e-waste. And this is something I posted on my LinkedIn also a while back. Apple sold over 230 million iPhones in 2023. And this is 2023 alone. The weight of your average phone, or iPhone, is about 200 grams. And I said Apple sold 230 million phones. All of that adds up to about 46,000 tons of e-waste from iPhones alone. Now that's a lot. And I've just used one example. Think of your other phones, think of your computers, think of your headphones. All of these devices are contributing to e-waste. And these numbers are a stark reminder of the urgent need to rethink our tech consumption and e-waste management practices. But like I said, I want to focus on organizations. Now, when we think from an organizational perspective, there is no doubt everyone in this room has used or heard of ChatGPT, right? A single ChatGPT conversation uses about half a liter of water. One single ChatGPT conversation uses half a liter of water to power the data centers. And I haven't gone into electricity yet, right? I mean, there are figures around electricity also, which I will point out in due course. So the ICT industry, as you'll see on the slide, significantly influences environmental sustainability due to its energy consumption, the e-waste that it generates, and the resource utilization in its supply chain. So while the ICT industry is playing a massive role in driving technological advancement, it also has a significant environmental impact about which we need to be concerned. And the term green ICT, which has come into prevalence, refers to the adoption of environmentally friendly practices in the entire life cycle of ICT products. So when I say entire life cycle of the ICT product, I mean from their design to production to their use and disposal. All the activities in that life cycle focus on green ICT. So this essentially, or green ICT essentially involves making energy efficient devices, using sustainable materials in production, and reducing the industry's overall environmental impact. And I mean, it's important to consider that green ICT is not just about reducing emissions during product usage, but also addressing the broader supply chain and end-of-life management, such as effective e-waste recycling programs. The ICT sector is a crucial part of our global sustainability efforts, making it essential to implement genuine green ICT practices. And I emphasize on the word genuine because it's the organizations or the ICT organizations' onus to implement genuine green ICT practices in order to mitigate negative environmental effects. So this led us to consider, or led my research team to consider the questionable green ICT practices in the ICT industry, particularly explore the questionable ICT practices of companies that claim to be sustainable, but often undermine real environmental progress. So you see on the one side, I'm saying, well, here are companies that are claiming that they're doing the right thing by the environment. But I wanted to ask is whether there is actually a disconnect between corporate sustainability claims and actual environmental outcomes. So as we progress in the presentation in my session today, I'll look at topics like greenwashing, which I will outline next week in the next slide, and also inconsistent sustainability reporting. That means companies are not reporting their the problems that they're facing, and which also leads us to consider the fact that companies may not be as green as they present themselves, and that's why they're 50 shades of green. Right? So this presentation aims to examine these issues and propose ways to promote transparency and accountability in ICT's approach to sustainability. So literature review, greenwashing. I'm not sure how many of you have heard greenwashing. If you have, please pop your responses in the chat screen. Greenwashing essentially is companies presenting themselves as eco-friendly, but in reality, their practices are not as sustainable as they claim to be. That's why that word greenwashing. Many companies, present themselves as being eco-friendly, but essentially they may not be. Greenwashing often misleads customers and stakeholders, masking the true environmental impact of a company's activity. And this is especially prevalent in the ICT field, where sustainability claims often go unchecked. Now think about your own organizations. Let's for a moment forget ICT companies. Think about your own workplaces and whether the sustainability practices, what are the sustainability practices? How are those sustainability practices being monitored and reported is the point. A company will often come up with practices, but then there is no monitoring and reporting. If there is reporting, well, who is getting to see those reports? These are questions to consider. That leads me to my second bullet point, which is the e-waste issues. E-waste issues is another pressing problem, or is an issue, because remember when I was talking to you about Apple's example in my first slide, I said 46,000 tons of e-waste just from iPhones alone. So the rapid pace of technological development is leading to a constant cycle of new devices, creating large amounts of e-waste. And the challenges are related to the disposal and recycling of e-waste. In fact, countries like Australia are often using China as their dumping ground, which means all e-waste from here goes to China. So the issue is we really need to focus on enhancing the infrastructure for safe disposal of e-waste. And ICT companies, again, have a role to play in developing better recycling processes and taking more responsibility of the life cycle of their products. See, life cycle of the product is important. I mean, since we've started on that trend of using iPhone as an example, let's stick to that example only. Every year there is a new iPhone. The previous one becomes obsolete. Even if, and after 5 to 6 years, the company stops supporting the product, there are no software upgrades. That means what happens then? Even a functional phone essentially becomes non-functional. So that means an obsolete product which is going to contribute to e-waste for no reason. Repairability is another issue. And I've written an article in the Conversation, which is a media house, and I think the Conversation also publishes in Indonesia widely, and academics publish in it. So in that article, I talked about the right to repair. That right to repair as a customer is not there. When you look at an iPhone, you can't, if there is a problem with the battery of the iPhone, well, you can't just take it off and replace the battery. You can't do it yourself. Now, the company obviously gives their own reasons for it. If you're interested, just Google up that article. I've given lots of information in it. And that now leads me to the third point about carbon offsets. Carbon offsets are a popular strategy among ICT companies to reduce their environmental impact. But there are concerns about the effectiveness and transparency of the carbon offset programs. Then we have life cycle assessments, which are important to understand the full environmental impact of ICT products. However, life cycle assessments are not widely adopted, especially when companies prioritize short-term costs over long-term environmental benefits. Finally, regulatory frameworks. There are various international and national regulations to promote green ICT practices, but enforcement remains inconsistent. So while we have these frameworks that provide a foundation, without strong oversight, questionable sustainability practices still continue. Now, moving on to the methodology that we adopted for this study. I used a case study approach, which allowed me to investigate the sustainability practices of key players in the ICT industry. So examination of selected ICT companies. By focusing on specific companies, or it enabled me to provide a detailed examination of their sustainability claims versus their actual practices. The criteria for selecting the company. So how did we select those companies? Well, for us, what we looked at is they needed to have a large public footprint, and also the companies should be known for their sustainability claims. And also, we also wanted to see whether they've been criticized for their sustainability claims, because ultimately, in order to compare corporate their own claims versus their criticism, we needed to find information. So we chose 4 companies. We chose to look at Amazon, Google, Apple, and Microsoft. For data sources, we relied on media and third-party reports. So we looked at media reports, and we looked at third-party reports such as organizations as Greenpeace. In our analytical method, we used qualitative content analysis to assess the available data. And as you perhaps know, qualitative content analysis allows for a detailed review and helped us identify discrepancies into how genuine discrepancies and the genuineness of their green initiatives. Look, if there are any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat screen. I can pretty much handle them simultaneously. So findings and analysis now. When we were looking at Amazon, so like I said, and I'll just quickly again, we looked at Amazon, Google, Apple, and Microsoft. They were the 4 ICT companies that we selected. Amazon, there were 2 problems that we found. Amazon's reported energy consumption has been inconsistent with its claims of environmental sustainability, raising concerns about the validity of its own green credentials. Amazon says that it's achieved 100% renewable energy consumption for its operations in 2023, but critics have argued that this claim does not reflect the actual energy mix powering its data centers. And this data center problem actually picked up pace in 2023 because artificial intelligence, as you know, all of a sudden shot up, or use of artificial intelligence shot up in 2023. As a result, more data centers were created. And consequently, these companies have fallen back in achieving their green credentials, if we want to call it. Greenpeace, which is a third-party company that we also used, criticized Amazon about its energy mix. And they suggested that, Amazon is drawing a significant portion of its power from companies that are powered by fossil fuels. So if they're using electricity that is provided by a company that is being powered by fossil fuels, it raises questions about the authenticity of their environmental claims. So we found greenwashing and energy transparency issues in Amazon, and we also found e-waste management transparency issues. Again, while Amazon claims to have robust recycling programs, there is limited public information about the actual processes and what happens to their decommissioned equipment, because decommissioned equipment is very crucial. So you're using, hardware. What happens to that hardware when it gets decommissioned? So this lack of transparency is evident in Amazon. Obviously not a good picture to paint, but remember, this is what we were trying to find out. 50 Shades of Green. Google, as we know, has positioned itself as a leader in renewable energy investments. And they claim that they are committed to sustainability, but they also provide cloud services to fossil fuel companies. So providing that services to fossil fuel companies is also seen as problematic, because on one side you're saying, yep, our focus is on green credentials, green ICT, but on the other hand, you're providing services to, or cloud services to fossil fuel companies such as Saudi Aramco, which is a company. So this partnership has raised concerns about the company's environmental integrity itself. Google's greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 48% over the past 5 years, which again, problem. This, in fact, an increase of 48% contradicts Google's own goals of achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030, because Google said we will become net zero carbon emission company by 2030. So they're having trouble achieving that as well. Then looking at the carbon offset credibility, like any large company, ICT company, Google also uses carbon offsets to balance out its carbon footprint. The effectiveness of these carbon offsets has been questioned. The impact and Google's shift from purchasing, very recently, this was recent, Google has moved away from purchasing carbon credits. So they're saying we'll not rely on carbon credits, but we will focus on direct emission reductions, which is a good move, I think, in my opinion. Then moving away from Google to Apple. Earlier on, remember I talked to you about planned obsolescence. Apple has actually been criticized for practices that lead to increased e-waste. They develop products that have limited repairability. That's problematic. So the company's emphasis on recycling, while beneficial, does not address the issues of planned obsolescence and the short lifespan of its own products. So ultimately what happens? There is an increase in e-waste. Then Apple has also been questioned about its own recycling inefficiencies. In fact, very recently there was an article where Apple, so as you know, you can trade in your Apple products. So Apple collected about 100,000 of those phones. They were sent to a recycling company in China. Now, unfortunately, what happened was from that company, 100,000 phones were stolen. 100,000, yep. And they obviously ended in the market again. So because they could be actually, sorry, they were, I don't remember the place where the recycling company was, but they ended up in other countries, those phones. So the company then obviously, was portrayed in bad light because Apple has hired a supplier to help them in recycling. But that recycling company, the phones, rather than being destroyed. So when I say destroy, remember the purpose, what the recycling company has to do? They have to open the phone apart, take every component and sift those components, because there are natural elements in those phones that have to be taken out before they can be fully destroyed. But 100,000 phones were stolen. They ended up in other countries where they were fixed and sold. So the financial incentive, and see, the other problem also is the financial incentives for me as a customer to participate in recycling programs is often lower. So what that means is, if I take my phone to an Apple store, Apple might give me $200. Whereas if I sell it outside Apple, I might get $400 for my old phone. So what that also tells you is Apple's not really taking a very strong stance about environmental sustainability. And again, look, these initiatives and these criticism, I'm not coming up with this criticism myself. We picked up media reports that have found all of this. So from Apple, moving on to Microsoft. Microsoft, again, they've got ambitious targets to become carbon negative by 2030. But Microsoft's climate strategy has also been criticized because they've also increased their overall emissions. Yeah, I think there's a 46% increase in their overall emissions since in 2020 when they pledged to reduce their emissions. So the conflict between Microsoft's sustainability goals and also its partnerships with fossil fuel companies is problematic. Then there's green washing and technology viability. So greenwashing is taking place, and also concerns about technology viability. That means Microsoft is investing in projects where the technology is not available to assist them in reducing their greenhouse gas emissions or helping them become carbon negative. So problem again. So rather than see one shade of green, 50 shades of green, I'm actually just seeing one shade of green now, right? That is a problem throughout. So when I think of the outcomes of all of this, what we are seeing is the examined companies' claim do not always align with their actual environmental practices. There is widespread greenwashing. That means they are not portraying the exact outcomes. There is also limitations of life cycle assessments. Their life cycle assessments actually fall short of achieving corporate sustainability goals. As I said, Google is making claims about neutrality, but on the other hand, they're still supporting fossil fuel companies. E-waste management challenges remain a critical issue because as we've seen in Amazon and Apple's practices, there's no doubt these companies have improved their recycling. They're using recycled materials, but product design such as having limited repairability adds to the e-waste problem. And one thing that I haven't mentioned in here is the regulatory and regulatory market forces also play a crucial role in shaping corporate environmental practices. And as a consumer, I am sometimes also skeptical about carbon offsets. Rather, what I'd like to see is emissions, a reduction in direct emissions. So stronger regulations, greater transparency, and financial incentives are important. So practical implications, what we need, we want ICT companies to report more honestly in more detail. Clear communication of environmental goals, progress, and setbacks is important. Improving e-waste management is required. These companies need to promote a circular economy where devices are reused or responsibly recycled. So regulatory frameworks, there should be strengthened regulatory frameworks, and greater consumer pressure also can help. Right to repair, the European Union passed a law about right to repair. So that is regulatory pressure. Also, you will also have noticed last year how everyone's now moving to C-type USB-C. That's becoming a world standard, right? And I think it's a great move. Rather than Apple having their monopoly over lightning cables, now we're seeing USB-C. So that is good design. So because even remember that also contributes to e-waste. And then finally, educating consumers. It's important to raise consumer awareness through education campaigns and accessible information so that customers can make informed choices. They can align their purchasing habits with their own environmental values. And in the end, greenwashing is widespread in the ICT industry, with many companies, or at least those 4 that we've looked at, overstating their sustainability efforts. There is a clear disconnect between corporate claims and actual environmental impact. Companies often lack clear, measurable goals for reducing their carbon footprint, making it difficult to hold them accountable. So, accurate and transparent sustainability reporting is important for meaningful progress towards greener ICT practices. And as a limitation of the study, we focused on large ICT companies, and consequently, we've not captured the practices of smaller or emerging businesses. Reliance also, as I said earlier on, we've relied on media and third-party reports. That means the findings are subject to the biases of these media reports and third-party reports. So future research can obviously, plug those gaps. And look, in closing, in order to truly uncover the 50 shades of green, in the ICT industry, we need to move beyond superficial claims and demand genuine transparency and accountability. Just a list of references there, and look, I'm happy to take questions. The content of this presentation is based on a paper that I've co-authored with Dr. Sangeeta Kuti, and that paper has been submitted to the conference as well and is currently under review. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh. So I take some note for your presentation that actually these big IT companies, they say they are doing towards the more green practice on their business, but in reality, what they say report on the media is actually kind of opposite in the practical in the practice. And yeah, we need to also make sure that as a consumer, we have to make a intelligent decision, informed decision about what we need to purchase from this company. And also we have to consider a lot of things, including the process of just to produce the product, and then after the product is being used, how this e-waste being recycled, and so on and so on. And you mentioned about this 100,000 recycled iPhone sent to China, and then it was spread across the globe. They resell it. It's quite funny, but it's concerning.
It is
Thank you
concerning.
very much. Thank you very much. We are going to continue with the second presenter, and then we are going to have the Q&A session later after the second presenter speaker already have the presentation. And
I've just shared that link for that 100,000 phones in the chat screen.
Okay, that's very quick. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh. And then now for our second speaker from Aligarh Muslim University, represented by Dr. Suha Bilkis. The time is yours. Dr. Suha, would you kindly okay.
Okay, so a very good afternoon, everyone. So Dr. Ayesha was supposed to be here today, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, she couldn't make it. So we've been working on this paper together. So on behalf of her, today I'll be presenting a short research presentation on the paper that we've been currently working on. So on behalf of her, I would like to thank the organizers for giving her this opportunity. She would be really grateful if she would be able to make it, but unfortunately. So on behalf of her today, I'll be making the presentation. Is my screen visible? I hope.
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah. Just give me a second. Okay. So the topic that I'm going to present today is challenges of integrating environmental sustainability in GCC countries. So GCC is basically the Gulf Cooperation Council. So the reason for choosing the GCC was that the GCC countries are heavily oil-reliant economies. So it is very important to throw light on what are their sustainability practices, especially when we talk in terms of environmental sustainability. So that is why we have taken the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, which include countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and this is a group of 6 countries, all of which are heavily oil-reliant economies. So this is going to be the flow of the presentation, beginning with introduction, then sustainability in the GCC countries, problem statement, followed by research questions, and finally with the analysis, findings, and conclusions. So, beginning with the introduction to the topic, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries have, witnessed a significant growth, economic growth and development over the past few decades, especially countries like we see UAE and Qatar. We have Qatar before FIFA, and the Qatar after FIFA is a completely different world. So there is a lot of economic growth and development over these past few decades. So this has led to the exploitation of vast oil and gas reserves. Okay, however, this growth has posed formidable challenges in terms of sustainability, raising concerns about what are the structural impediments that hinder the effective implementation of sustainability practices in this region. Also, these nations are currently experiences a lot of migration from other countries, especially UAE and Qatar. So this also in turn gives us a demand for consumption of energy resources, deeper integration with global markets, and developments within their financial industries, as a lot of expatriate laborers are coming into their economies. So this has become a significant challenge to tackle for these economies in terms of environmental sustainability. Now, talking about specifically GCC countries, taking each country into consideration. First, we have Qatar and UAE. So these are like particularly notable energy-rich nations, especially when we talk in terms of development. So with also these have strong global ambition and a higher degree of engagement with global environmental initiatives. Like recently, we see that Saudi Arabia has signed the Energy Pact for 2030 to reduce their carbon footprints. Also, these countries are focusing more on economic diversification rather than on sustainability. They are diversifying, trying to shift from oil to non-oil revenues. But is this shift sustainable? That is the question that we need to ask. Also, if we talk about UAE, it has demonstrated a commitment to integrating into global networks and adopting advanced environmental practices. For instance, if we talk about UAE, it hosts the International Renewable Energy Agency, that is called the IRENA headquarters in Masdar City. And Masdar City was an idea of a complete sustainable city that they formed. It had a low carbon. It was a low carbon mega project promoting ecological innovation, which was started in 2008. But the question arises is that they still don't know whether it was a success or not. Also, the Rio 20 conference was for green growth strategy, which was conducted by UAE, is also an initiative that they have taken, which was also called the Third Earth Summit. So this proactive stance on sustainable development contrasts with climate skeptic countries like Saudi Arabia, which don't focus a lot on sustainability, and Kuwait also. So these countries have historically hindered the progress on critical issues such as climate change, which needs to be taken into consideration, especially when we are talking about economic diversification. Now, talking about Qatar, like I said, Qatar was a totally different world before FIFA and after FIFA, and there was a lot of exploitation in terms of social sustainability. There was exploitation of labor, exploitation of environment while forming the stadium. So after that, it has engaged with the global agenda, Qatar, particularly in climate action discussed before the 2014 oil drop. This oil drop has led to the entire talk about economic diversification that has taken place in the Gulf countries. So as a small and wealthy country and the region's only significant gas exporter, Qatar has the potential to surpass the UAE in energy efficient buildings like the Mazda city I discussed. So these energy targets and renewable energy targets and knowledge production is something that Qatar is taken into consideration. Additionally, if we talk about the entire GCC group as a whole, so these may not adequately be prepared for external shocks from a warming planet. Like recently, we've seen the floods in Dubai. So this is what is the, you can say, repercussions of talking about diversification, but not talking about sustainability. So these countries may also face a crisis in a globalized world influenced by strong regional economic players with a vision that extends beyond localism and provincialism, traits especially inherent to GCC countries like oil dependency strategy. Now coming to the problem statement. Now what is the actual problem that they need to solve, or what is the actual problem that needs to be taken into consideration? So environmental degradation, primarily due to rising greenhouse gases, this poses a significant obstacle to achieving sustainability. Like we already know that the level of global hydrogen gases is increasing. So the detrimental effect of these global hydrogen gases on human health and the environment is becoming a pressing global issues, as we can see that climate change brings various natural hazards, which in turn leads to different outbreak of various pandemics. So this is basically a very pressing global issue. Now, what these countries need to do is they need to understand the increasing CO2 emissions, not only in their particular nation, but also worldwide, as they are exporting a lot of oil and natural gases, and also their economic model is renterism. That is, they work on rents from oil and gas. So this has also posed as a significant challenge. Also, increasing energy consumption. Now, when we talk about globalization or energy consumption, that we'll be discussing further in the challenges. So all this leads to increased energy consumption, which is driven by population growth, rapid urbanization, and economic development that poses a significant challenge to environmental sustainability in the region. For instance, if we talk about countries like UAE and Qatar, then these exert a significant pressure on coastal ecosystems and infrastructure planning. Like during the formation of the stadium during the FIFA World Cup, a lot of coastal ecosystems were also harmed along with the labor and other issues. So these developments are vulnerable to global risks such as climate change, which would worsen without proper safeguards and strategies. Now, that brings us to our research questions, that what are the actual challenges of environmental sustainability implementation in the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and what is the relationship between these identified challenges, or is there any hierarchy among these challenges that we have identified? Are they interrelated or not? So to answer these research questions, we have formulated 3 research objectives. That is to identify challenges of environmental sustainability implementation in GCC countries using PRISMA, that we'll be discussing in detail further. Also to identify direct and transitive relationship among the identified challenges. And then finally, to identify the hierarchy among the identified challenges through a diagram. So this is a research roadmap that we have opted for this study. So first we went about with the literature review. For that we used PRISMA. So PRISMA is basically a systematic literature review method to conduct a thorough literature review. I'll be discussing and showing you the details in the further slides. Next, after we identified the challenges to literature review, and then we took the opinions of the expert, that are there any other challenges except the ones that we have identified through the review? And then experts, they gave their opinion on the identified challenges. Finally, we went about with total interpretive structural modeling, which is a qualitative technique. To test TISM, we have the Micmac analysis, and then finally we have the findings. So coming to the first part of this research, like I mentioned before, the literature review. So for literature review, we went about with the systematic literature review approach, which was carried out using PRISMA, which is a methodology referring to preferred reporting items for systematic review and meta-analysis. And this is conducted through a flow diagram. So this PRISMA methodology for SLR was adopted because it summarizes the available literature. Any topic that we're going to study has a vast amount of literature. So it basically helps in summarizing the available literature in an orderly manner. So this methodology was adopted. So for PRISMA, we have various search boundaries and various research engine, and then we put in various keyword combination to conduct the research. So these are various keyword combinations that were carried out, like challenges or barriers of sustainability. And these are various databases that we have used because these are one of the most vast, most renowned, and most reliable databases. So on the basis of their credibility, they were selected. Next, we have the inclusion and exclusion criteria for keeping the papers in our research. So in inclusion, we had only index journal, book chapters, and industry reports. We did not include conference proceedings or unpublished papers. Next, we had full text and the ones which were in English. And then we took a period from 2015 to 2023. The reason for taking this particular time period was because there was a very steep oil drop in 2014. So it was only after that that the Gulf Cooperation Council countries started focusing on economic diversification, and the rate or the pace of diversification increased rapidly. So this was the reason this particular time period, that is after 2015, was taken into consideration. Now, this is the PRISMA flow diagram. So after conducting or after entering all the keywords from all the databases, we came up with a certain group of papers, and then we screened them on basis of various criteria, like if they were relevant to the study, the years in which they were published, whether there were any duplicates or not. And finally, we had 21 studies that we included in this study for coming up with the challenges of sustainability. So after conducting the literature review, we came out with various research gaps, which include the main research gap that we came across, that there was an ample of literature available on economic diversification, that what are the other sources of income that Gulf Cooperation Council countries can rely on except oil or revenues from oil and gas. So a lot of literature is available on economic diversification, but not a lot of studies that we came across cater to or throw light on what are the sustainability challenges or what are the impediments that hamper the environment while diversifying, whether they're building the infrastructure or they're building coming up with new technology. What are their environmental repercussions? How are they going to harm the environment, or whether they're taking the environment into consideration while diversifying or not. So this is the gap that we came across. Then we have research methodology. So our research design was exploratory and qualitative. Data type for both primary and secondary. And then we had a sample size of 22. So basically for total interpretive structural modeling, 3 to 5 interviews are enough because there is already literature backing for the challenges that we have identified. But since we were talking about 6 countries, so we decided to go with a larger sample. Now, this is the profile of the respondents or the experts that took part in our study. Basically, it was through LinkedIn and email and on a basis of our contacts through snowball sampling. So we had both people from industry as well as academia. Am I audible, I hope?
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Suha, would you kindly to open the, what is it? We can to open the camera if possible.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, we have really bad weather here today, so because of a technological glitch, I thought of just give me a second. Am I visible? Is it fine now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So coming to the challenges. Okay. So now we've been talking about the challenges that we have identified through the literature review. So these are the identified challenges that we have. So first we have globalization. As we know that the world has become a global village. Okay, so increase in globalization will enhance the investment and production of goods that augments the energy utilization and thereby increases the CO2 emissions. So there are a lot of new countries, a lot of new companies coming in from all over the world. Each company has its own policies related to environment. Also, when we talk about globalization, a lot of countries use bigger countries, more developed countries use countries with easier environmental regulations to carry out their productions that they cannot do in their own countries because of more strict or heavier restrictions on environmental emissions and regulations. So globalization has become a challenge for environmental sustainability when we talk about the GCC nations. Next, we have financial development. Now, several studies have shown that financial development can lead to increased environmental degradation as a lot of money can be pumped into enterprises that are harming the environment and are not putting a check on their emissions. Next, we have energy utilization. So energy use is a key driver of economic growth and development for all countries, but it is also a significant source of greenhouse gases that harm the environmental quality. Because like I said before also that energy utilization is the key to globalization, financial development, economic growth. Anything that is helping in the economy to develop will require energy. So energy utilization forms a base for all these challenges. Next, we have economic growth. So a rise in economic growth increases resource usage and energy demand, which causes environmental degradation. Like I said, that energy utilization forms the core of all these development challenges. Next is the dependence on fossil fuels. So like Gulf Population Council countries are very much dependent on their oil and gas exports. That's why these are called the, you can say, the oil capital of the world. So, transitioning to a more sustainable economy requires diversifying the economic base, which is a significant structural challenge because even now that we talk about driverless cars or we talk about less fuel dependent cars, so what is the future of these oil and gas producing countries? So their dependence on fossil fuel, which is a big challenge for the environment, also is a thing that they need to take into consideration looking at the future of the environment. Next, environmental impact of subsidies. So large subsidies, especially for energy and water, distort the cost of consumption and discourage conservation. So these countries give, because they have oil and gas in abundance, so they give subsidies on these. Also, they give a lot of subsidies on water and other resources, which in turn leads to wastage. So subsidies are also something that's they need to have a check for. Next is non-environmental friendly infrastructure. So like recently we have seen in terms of Dubai floods, that although there is a lot of infrastructure development, there is a lot of advancement in terms of infrastructure, but does this infrastructure harm the environment, or what were the actions that were taken while building the infrastructure? Were ecosystems harmed, like you can say marine ecosystems, or were other environmental impacts taken into check or not? So infrastructure building is good, but also it needs to take environmental consideration while development. Next, we have renterism's spillover sustainability. So renterism is basically the structure of economy that these countries follow. So they basically take rents from oil and gas revenues, and then further these rents are used to build the economy. So many GCC countries follow a rentier state model where the government distributes income from natural resources to provide extensive welfare benefits to citizens, complicating various efforts to promote sustainable practices. Next, we have labor market. So there is a very large proportion of expatriate labor in the region which presents a challenge because a lot of a lot of economic development or infrastructure development require labor. So these people they encourage expatriate labor, but this labor in turn poses a challenge in implementing the nationalization quotas and promoting sustainable practices within the workforce because there is more usage of resources, there's more exploitation of resources. Also, this expatriate labor is not aware of the laws and regulations regarding the environment, so this brings a lot of wastage of resources. Next, we have challenge in climate policy integration. So the main challenge concerning climate-related data, information, and awareness that is slowing the integration of climate challenges in policy is inadequacy of available climate-related data. So although these countries may say that they are working towards the environment, but there is not a lot of data available to support their arguments. So lack of data is one of the issues in climate policy integration. Next issue is the limited awareness of climate change knowledge among stakeholders. So there's not a lot of awareness and knowledge. Like if we talk about more developed countries towards the west, so they are more aware of these climate challenges. But if we talk about GCC countries, then there is limited awareness of climate change knowledge among stakeholders. Finally, last, we have the last challenge that we're going to discuss is political dynamics. So regional political dynamics and the varying level of commitment amongst GCC members can impact the collective ability to implement and enforce regional sustainability initiatives. So a government has a very, very big role to play while we talk about climate policy or implementation of climate policies. So it is the government which needs to enforce or bring about laws that save the environment along with development. So development is not the only thing that needs to be taken care of, but also it must go hand in hand with the environmental sustainability. So these were the various challenges that we have identified through literature review of the implementation of environmental sustainability in GCC countries. Now coming to the analysis part. So for analysis, we have taken the total interpretive structural modeling. Like I said, it is a qualitative technique to find out the relationship and the hierarchy among these identified challenges. So the first step that we have in a total interpretive structural modeling is the development of structural self-interaction matrix. So this is basically a matrix that we've created of our challenges, and then it is given to the experts. So experts find out the relationship among these challenges by filling one of these alphabets, as you can see on the screen. We have O, X, V, and A depending on the interlinkages between the factors, whether if there is no relationship, for example, between globalization and energy development, then it's going to be an A. And if there is one-way relationship, then it's an X. If it's two-way, then V. And if one factor brings about hindrance in the implementation of other factor, then it's an A. So this is basically how the SSIM looks like, the structural self-interaction matrix. So this has been filled by experts depending on what is the relationship, and these challenges have been coded as you can see on the screen. So this is a brief look at the SSIM. Next, we have the reachability matrix. So reachability matrix basically highlights the transitive links. Now, if factor A is dependent on factor B and then factor B is dependent on factor C, then we have a transitive link between A and C. That is what transitivity is, right? So this basically highlights the transitivity by giving 1 or 0 values, and the star value, you can see, that depicts the transitive links. After the reachability matrix, we divide these identified challenges into various levels depending on their significance or importance. Like you can see here, we have done the level partitioning, and we have economic diversification at level 1 followed by other levels. So we'll be depicting this through a diagram. Now this is the diagram that we have come out after the level partition. Like we saw that at level 1, we have economic diversification, energy utilization, and dependence on fossil fuel. And at level 4, that is a building block of all these challenges, is renterism. So dotted lines here represent the transitive links, that is the indirect links, and the solid lines depict the direct links. So as you can see that renterism is the structure of the GCC economy. So basically it is a building block on which all the other challenges rely, because it is basically from the revenues from oil and natural gas that these countries are developing or moving towards diversification. So renterism basically has a direct link, as you can see, with political dynamics, non-environmental friendly infrastructure, economic growth, financial development, and globalization, whereas it has indirect links with challenges in climate policy integration and labor markets. Also, economic growth has direct links with environmental impact of subsidies, which is another important challenge. Also, financial development and political dynamics have direct links, and rest of the factors have transitive links. So this is the diagram that we have formulated on the basis of our level partition and total interpretive structural modeling. Now, coming to the micmac analysis, it is basically to check. Now, in this, we have linkage variable, the driving factors, and the dependent factors. Now, to check these, we have, like here we can see that environmental impact of subsidies is the linkage variable. It is linking level 4 and 3 with level 1. So to check this, we have the micmac analysis, which divides these factors into driving, dependent, linkage, and autonomous, depending on the quadrant in which they lie in. So the first quadrant is autonomous, the second is dependent, third is linkage, and the fourth is independent. So basically, we have mostly all our factors with high dependence and driving power. That is, they are highly interrelated, all these challenges. So mostly all these factors, but the environmental impact of subsidies, like you can see, it is a linkage variable. Therefore, it lies in the next quadrant. Like we have also seen through our diagram that this is the linkage variable. Now coming to the findings. Now, the result of the study indicates that renterism directly affects, like I already said, globalization, financial development, economic growth, governance and infrastructure, and political dynamics in the GCC countries. Also, one of the authors stated that globalization, economic growth negatively impacts environmental sustainability, which may be caused due to rentier state model, which derives income from selling fossil fuels. So there is also literature backing of our finding that we have come out with. Next, we have renterism. Like I said, has indirect or transitive link with labor market and climate policy integration. This is due to the fact that stakeholders, all the people that are linked to this differentiate between economic and sustainable development policies, and in turn do not support development from sale of fossil fuels. Also, political dynamics is directly linked to environmental impact of subsidies, as it is the government that decides the subsidy policies. Next, we have challenges in CPI, that is climate policy integration, labor market governance and infrastructure, and globalization. These have a transitive link with environmental impact of subsidies, which is due to the fact that some of the obstacles to sustainability have been brought to force, including high energy subsidies and large footprints, or the lack of renewable energy and low prioritization of environmental sustainability, like we have discussed already in detail. And this leads to the entanglement of socio-political realities with the realization of truly sustainable policy and programs. Now, finally, we have economic growth and financial development, which have a direct link with environmental impact of subsidies, making it a linkage variable, like our model suggests. So this was all about the challenges. Now, finally coming to the conclusion, we can say that sustainable energy is one of the niches in which Gulf Cooperation Council countries could attain real competitive advantage, especially renewable energy or green capitalism instead of renterism can be one of the solutions to this great challenge. Also, the non-oil sector in the region has grown in recent years. They are moving towards or developing their renewable energy resources. So the diversification process is still ongoing. And among this diversification process, I think renewable energy could also be one of the segments that they can diversify into. For example, if we talk about emerging industries in Saudi Arabia, like the tourism industry is rapidly growing. So these include also, along with tourism, there is mining and petrochemical, which have significant energy and environmental impact. So these need to be checked. And some GCC states like the UAE have been more successful in diversification, with Dubai serving as a model for non-oil development, because now the reports state that Dubai economy is not heavily reliant on oil and development. But like I said, there is lack of information about what are the developments. There is a lot of talk, but there is not data or information to support that. So generating most, like Dubai is generating most of its state revenue through fees from tourism and a large immigration population. So this is all about it. Thank you. Any questions are welcome.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Suhabilkis. And all right. Thank you very much for both speakers, Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh and Dr. Suhabilkis, for their wonderful presentation. Now, before that, I'm going to, I took notes on Dr. Suha's presentation that actually it's always the questions economic growth versus environmental sustainability. In this case, in Gulf Cooperation Council countries, they are heavily, dependent on the oil or fossil fuel selling. And some of the countries actually, they are moving away from that, and they are diversifying the economic revenue from other sources. But that is one example or two examples, but most of the GCC countries are still on using this economic revenue from selling fossil fuel to distribute this wealth to the people, and then that will complicate things. And yes, I think that is my takes on Dr. Suha's presentation. Now let's go to the first questions. Now we will begin our Q&A session. So we have received a couple questions from participants through the Zoom platform. I will now read out the questions, and our speakers will share their thoughts and opinions. So for the first one, from Zari, thanks for mentioning about educating consumers about sustainable practices. How can ICT companies create a sustainability-driven culture among their employees? So this first questions, maybe it's for Professor Ritesh. And would you like to answer it?
Yes, sure.
Okay, please.
Can you hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. Zari, that's a very good question you've asked there. Look, I think I want to reflect on my own experience and the response. In fact, your question doesn't necessarily focus on ICT companies alone, because it's a question that is for every company. And that's why my response is also for every company. My response is also based on what I've seen and practiced. So I think firstly, the most important thing, because it has to be an overarching structure that actually starts from the top. Sustainability is something that has to be built into the organization's mission and vision statements, because till the time environmental goals are built into the organizational mission and vision statements, getting people to believe in them and practice them can be very challenging. So that's point number one. Point number two, it's important for organizational leadership to champion green ICT or green initiatives in the organization. Whether they're green ICT initiatives or any sustainability initiatives, it's important for leadership to champion them. Because as with any initiative, once these sustainability initiatives are championed by leadership, adoption is faster and quicker. Organizations should also invest resources in fostering sustainability projects. So when I say sustainability project could be, I mean, a few years ago, we used to talk about double side printing. They said, don't print on single side, print on double side. Now we are saying stop printing altogether, because, you know, we don't feel the need for it anymore, because all the time we've got devices with us. So when I say device, it could be your phone, it could be your tablet, obviously it could be your computer. So you see how the initiatives also keep changing. Also, I also feel that it's important to offer training to staff on sustainability practices. So just to give you a very simple example, when we get a cup of coffee, one of the debates that we often have is, should the entire coffee cup be recycled? So you've got a takeaway coffee, or is it just the lid that gets recycled and not the paper part? So a lot of people are not aware. So what they'll do is they'll chuck the entire cup in the recycling bin, which is wrong, because the lower part doesn't get recycled. It's only the plastic lid that gets recycled. Till about 2 months ago, I always had this dilemma. But 2 months ago, my workplace, they organized a training session for all staff. So I came to know this through a training session. So Zari, these are some of the initiatives that organizations can take to implement sustainability practices. So I hope that answers your question. Look, if you need to ask any follow-up question, please unmute and talk to us. Thank you.
Yes, also we are inviting all the participants to unmute yourself and then ask question directly, address the questions to the speakers.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the next questions is coming from Saifullah Arif. Hello, sir, ma'am. Thank you for your clear explanation about this. And it's so helpful for me because I'm taking IR study in this campus. IR stands for International Relation. Yeah. I want to ask about some issues that related to this. As we know, all GCC countries have big supply for oil, and that oil is used for manufacture, which is irrelevant to the sustainability. How a country should maintain their industries to make the environment sustain for the next generation? Because I think it seems impossible to use green economy terms if country want to boost their economy. I think this is for both of you. Maybe I would like to invite Dr. Suha first to share your thought about this.
Yeah. So that's like a very relevant question, that if not oil and gas, then what? I think that is what you're trying to ask. So now the technological development has come up with more renewable source of energy. Like the United Nations has signed the Solar Alliance, the Solar Impact, that heavily that encourages the world and all the countries, not only the GCC but all the countries. It has called out for all the countries across the world to rely more on renewable energy like solar energy, especially countries in the southern part of the GCC that have more supply of sun, that have more sun, that have more hotter environment. The more the more southern side of the planet. So these countries can take the renewable energy option, like the solar energy, wind energy, depending on their geographical locations. So that is one of the things. And also, like if we talk about emissions, then more we have green scooters now, e-scooters that we have called. Like in GCC, you don't see a lot of them, but you have cars with different number plates that have lower emissions. So that is one of the solutions that have been proposed for less reliant on oil and gas revenues.
Okay, so yeah, so what is it? Also the diversification of that economy, and then also the source of the energy, and then the use of the vehicle that is less to produce emission. And also I take note from Professor Ritesh about these fostering sustainable project or practices or initiative in the companies, yeah, and the training made by the companies for the employee to practice this what is it, how to recycle, etc., etc. And for the second question, Prof. Ritesh, do you have any
Yes,
response
Zikri,
on
thank
this?
you.
Okay.
I'll reflect on my own experience of living in the Gulf countries. So we all know these countries have large oil supplies. But as you know, everyone's talking about moving away from fossil fuel. So if we are going to move away from fossil fuels, well, in fact, there's talk of, these countries becoming reliant on other renewable sources of energy. And what that means is GCC countries have to transition towards other means or renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind. Wind is a good source to tap into. You travel around, I've traveled around the world and I've seen a lot of wind farms now that are tapping into wind. And also promoting energy efficiency and adopting cleaner technologies for manufacturing is important. In fact, that the question in the end, and I'm just reading, it says, because I think it seems impossible to use green economy terms if countries want to boost their economy. This is the question that was posed, right? And I disagree with it. If we are going to say that green economy is impossible, that's a hurdle in itself, because it's a mindset hurdle. This reminds me of a saying by Vincent van Gogh, a painter and an artist. He said, great things are not done by impulse, but they're done by a series of small things brought together. So we really have to start taking those small steps. A balanced approach to a green economy is important. So, and when I say a balanced approach, it's about a short-term economic growth that is pursued alongside long-term sustainability goals, because ultimately GCC countries also have to focus on their own economic development and environmental preservation for future generations. And green credentials are for future generations. Thanks, Zikri.
Okay, so yeah, so basically, actually, you say that maybe in actually we investing in green economy, actually it will bring more actually the job market. It also will increase, for example, creating a windmill and solar panel, and then it actually create a new job, and also it will increase the economy by itself. Yeah, so you said that this green economy is not possible. It's actually it's a problem of a mindset, right? But if we can somehow regulate and etc., etc., it actually will create revenue, and it will what is it, develop a new direction for the economy. Yes, and thank you. Now we are going to go to the next questions from Sadawi. I think this question is quite general, but how can the integration of green technologies within a circular economy model contribute to reducing carbon emission and resource depletion while promoting economic growth. I think our discussion already been around these questions, but maybe Prof. Ritesh or Dr.
Yep.
Suha would like to share the thought about these questions, please.
Sure. So the question is, how can the integration of green technologies with a circular economy? So let's focus on circular economy first. The focus of a circular economy should be on minimizing waste. And you can minimize waste by focus on 3 R's. Let's call those 3 R's: reuse, recycle, and remanufacture. And ultimately, what this will lead to, reducing the need for raw resource extraction and decreasing waste. So you see, all of this combined together focuses on minimizing waste. The second thing that I also alluded to in my presentation was a focus on reducing carbon emissions. Remember, I said, we need to move away from that focus on carbon offset programs, but rather we need to focus on reducing direct carbon emissions. So what that means is, green technologies like renewable energy is what we need to focus on. We also need to focus on enhancing resource efficiency. And ultimately, Zikri, one of the things that you mentioned when you were summarizing the previous question, you focused on economic growth, right? I did talk about economic growth, but ultimately, reduced operational costs from efficient use of materials and energy can actually boost profitability. So that's something to also consider. Yeah, we're talking about reducing our operational costs. So ultimately, we are going to promote economic growth also. And investing in new green industries or in green economies can actually create more jobs and stimulate economic growth in the long term. So that's some food for thought.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Ritesh. And then Dr. Suha, would you like to share your thought on this? You are still on mute.
Yeah, I would like to add to what Dr. Ritesh has said about reducing wastage. So recently in our country, there was a local company that came out with a campaign. So in that, basically, it showcased people wearing all the clothes they had while going out or carrying all the bags they had. So basically, it was a woman that was dragging a bag line that was almost 100 to 100 meters long. So if you imagine yourself in that, wearing all the shoes you own while you go out, or wearing all the clothes that you own. So if you imagine yourself in that situation, then that really brings us to the question that are we ourselves a part of reducing the wastage or not? So reducing wastage is like the first step that we can do towards sustainability in our bit. Also, like if you talk about circular economy, so there are other lot of diversification options. Like if you talk about GCC countries, like if they are working towards tourism. So if they're making a hotel alongside a beach, or if they are harming or going near any ecosystem, so there must be something that they must give out to the environment, like cleaning of the ocean of that particular area, or taking care of the ecosystems in that particular area. So that also helps in attracting tourists, that in turn will lead to more development or diversification, because especially when you talk about this generation Z, so they have become really environmental conscious. Now we have stock exchanges that specifically cater to companies that are focusing on ESG. We have ESG indexes, and then we have the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So this generation particularly is very conscious about sustainability. So if a company is working its bit towards the environment or doing a bit, then definitely it will attract more stakeholders, that in turn leads to more profit and development.
Okay.
So that I think is
Thank you very much, Dr. Suha, about your answer. Yeah. Recapping both of you. So yeah, the circular economy is trying to reduce the waste. Yeah, and then by 3R, use, recycle, and remanufacturing, which is actually reducing the raw material needed for the producing the new product, and then also reducing the waste at the end. And reducing the carbon emission, also direct reduce of carbon emission is also investing in new green economy and green energy, which is will increase the growth of economy in the long term. And then also when the company is trying to move away from this try to go to the green economy and sustainability, it will also invite more stakeholder to invest on their company. And then so there are questions anymore. Okay, so I would like to invite all of the participants. If you have questions, you can directly address the questions to the speaker here. We are still have time to discuss some of the questions if possible. And there is a questions on the chat is that will the presentation slide be shared? So this presentation is a part of a paper presentation, yeah, that will be later published in Taylor and Francis publisher. So later you can read the article in the published version. Now I would like to invite more questions. So so looking at the discussion that we have today, some of the companies actually most of not only IT but also other companies, they are trying to sell this sustainability in green idea, and etc. For example, some of the companies, they are inviting the buyers to take their own container. So they will provide for example, a shampoo and then a detergent and etc by using their own container. And also some of the, for example, restaurant or restaurant, they also invite the buyers to bring their own container. And for example, in Indonesia, in Bali, for example, there are destination for the pariwisata, or in English is called tourism in Bali, and they provide very environmentally friendly tours. And then, for example, if you have a to buy something, they will provide you with the bucket for from leaves and etc, which is trying to reduce the use of byproduct of fossil fuel, which is polymer and plastic. And there is another questions here. What are the economic benefits of investing in green technology for developing countries? This is question from Asmui, and then Professor Ritesh, would you like to...
Thanks, Asmui, for the question. I think I previously mentioned jobs. It'll lead to more jobs because new employment opportunities, basically, through green technologies. And those technologies could be in areas like manufacturing, installation, and maintenance. So, because when you think of green technology, we're also talking of solar. Let's use solar panels as an example. In Australia, the government is investing heavily in solar panels. In fact, there's rebates for citizens on solar panels. So obviously, manufacturing, it leads to more manufacturing. It leads to tradesmen getting work for installation. And then there is after installation maintenance also. So more employment opportunities is number one. Then the economic benefits also could mean, and this is an indirect one, I think. We are able to stabilize our energy costs by reducing reliance on fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are sometimes imported. So when I say imported, that means we're relying on Middle East, for example, to give us oil. But if we look at the landscape of Australia as an example, you've got plenty of land. So we can have big solar farms. In fact, there's a big project that's taking place in Western Australia where they've got massive solar farms and windmills. So that could lead to stabilizing energy costs rather than relying on imported fossil fuels. And ultimately, like I've said before, we need to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. The other benefit that I can think of is lowering of waste, because energy efficient technologies reduce operational cost. I mean, think of your e-cars as an example. There is a reduction in operational costs plus lower maintenance and good for the environment. Because remember, it's not just about economic benefits. I know the questions about economic benefits, but we're considering both. And one of the other things that I've noticed also is foreign investors in Australia particularly invest more in projects when they see, or it's easier to get international funding when they see investments in sustainable energy projects. And there's a comment there that it could also lead to improved public health. Absolutely. So healthier population. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And look, yeah, healthier population, and I think I'll just probably build on that. Zari, less pollution. More e-cars means less pollution, means healthier populations.
Yes. And Dr. Su, how would you like to add on this? You are still unmuted.
So I would like to add that investing in green technologies also brings into companies a different set of stakeholders that it would not otherwise achieve. Like I said, the Generation Z or the millennials are more conscious about the environment. So that is a set of stakeholders. For example, if you come across a country or come across a company that is hampering the environment, or if you come across a cosmetic product that is maybe testing its product on animals. So that leads to a sudden boycott, especially when we're talking about this new generation. So there are a lot of boycotts, or if there is company that is investing in something that is harming the society or particular sector society, like recently we have seen boycott for iPhone 16 because it has led to exploitation of certain segment of people in Congo. So that is a total disruption of social sustainability. So this brings in more stakeholders, investment in green technologies, in issues that help in solving in technologies that help in solving various sustainability issues. So there is a segment of people that is attracted to such companies. So that also is a way of bringing in stakeholders, a particular set of stakeholders that are very environment conscious. Like we've seen, if we talk about, like we've seen Greta Thunberg. So that has led to a different, you can say, way of conserving the environment. So this, in turn, I think brings a new set of stakeholders that brings profit for the industries.
Yes, that's yeah, both of you mentioned it about that the investor is more attracted if the company is actually investing I'm sorry, what is it? Yeah, investing, or they are the project is towards the sustainability. SDGs. And I believe that hopefully more investor aware of this and more environment conscious, so that this practice of the green energy, green technology will be sustainable, and it's not a jargon that only as Prof Ritesh, that it's greenwashing, just to say that, oh, we are using energy efficient, and so on and so on. But in reality, in practice, they are still doing the thing that, the energy consumption is increasing without a diversification of energy resources from solar panel, etc., etc. So this interesting discussion on this matter is that also the as we know that it's not only the companies that also trying to decrease the fossil fuel consumption, and then trying to go to the green energy. For example, German also, they are increasing their energy beside the fossil fuel. In Indonesia, one of the largest coal coal power plant, it's being shut down, and it's now replaced by the windmill, some of them, and then also the hydro plant. And maybe and also Indonesian government, through its BUMN, is what is it called in English? I forgot. I'm sorry. The companies under the government, they are electricity companies under the government. They are trying to promote the solar panel, so we can purchase a solar panel and then put it in our home, in our roof, and then we can have less an electric bill. And if we produce more electricity, it's actually the electricity is being transferred to the power plant and redistributed. And this kind of the energy, the use of energy, and then etc., which is also Prof Ritesh mentioned about increasing the jobs, the manufacturing, the tradesman, which is the one who installed the solar panel, and also later the maintenance. So it also stabilized the energy consumption and the dependence of the oil. And we are also now we are still have time for one or two questions, and I would like to invite again the participants to ask questions directly to our speakers today. All right.
So Zikri, if there are no questions, maybe something to consider for your participants. I think it's important for everyone to consider about their own sustainability practices. It takes everyone's individual effort is important. Sometimes, we keep waiting for the governments to act, but not doing what is required at our own individual level. I mean, at one stage, I noticed there was about 156 participants in the room. 156 participants doing their own right thing adds up. And 156 going and talking to their family times 2 or times 4 adds up to 600 to 1,000 people. So, and that's how sustainability efforts actually pick pace in any country. I mean, I remember that first question that Zari asked was about ICT organizations, and even at that time I said, it's important to focus on individuals also. It's not just organizations, it's not just governments. Real change starts at an individual level. So it's important that everyone in the room, wherever possible, I mean, it could just be simple things. We were talking, I mean, I know there was a question that was saying about, it seems impossible to use green economy terms if countries want to boost their economy. My question to everyone is, you focus on your own practices. What are you doing to conserve the environment? What are you doing for sustainability? So everyone should reflect on their own usage also. There is a question that I see come up. What do you think if Indonesia builds nuclear power? I think I will not get into that debate here.
Okay, so Mr. Dwinanto is actually a physics lecturer here.
Yeah.
Dwinanto PhD. He was graduated from Korean Institute of Technology, and yes, one of the expertise of him is that what is it? Padwi, would you like to introduce yourself? No. Okay, so this question is actually for example, going to the green economy, is the nuclear power included? But looking at the German decision to shut down their nuclear power plant, I don't think that this nuclear power plant is part of green energy, although it does not create emission, it will produce energy in the long term, etc., etc. But the effect on if failure happens, like in Fukushima or Chernobyl, it will create more disaster, actually.
Yep, absolutely. Zikri, I was thinking of Fukushima when that question was asked. Look, I think the alternative that governments are considering, it's obviously very strong in Australia, is hydrogen power. That's what we will see more of in the future. There's a lot of push on hydrogen power.
Yes. And
because
yes.
I mean, what we saw with Fukushima was a total waste management disaster.
Yeah. And I also heard that in Australia, like because of the solar panel energy production, and they do not have the way to store this energy, like the battery, it will not last long, etc., etc.
Yep.
The excess of the energy is used to produce hydrogen, and then later this hydrogen can be reused or to produce the fuel. Yeah, which is like environmentally friendly. The idea of that is very interesting, actually. Thank you for reminding me about that, Prof. Ritesh. And okay, now we are heading to the end of our session. So maybe we have a lot of we have presentation from both of speaker, and then we have also a discussion and in Q&A session. Maybe this time I would like to invite both of speaker to remarks, closing remark on their presentation. I'd like to invite Dr. Suha and then later Prof. Ritesh.
Sure.
Yes.
So I would like to thank everybody for giving us this opportunity to be here today. And if ma'am was here today, she would be really, happy. And especially to all the participants for being a very keen listeners and for being here present today for this webinar. It was a really informative and a really good and healthy discussion of what can be done to save the environment, because that is one of the most important, most talked about, but least worked upon topic that we are coming across these days. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suha. And then the closing remarks from Professor Ritesh Chugh, please.
Thank you, Dzikri. So I'll focus on the topic first. Personally, I think I was very ecstatic when I was writing this paper. I was literally ecstatic because it's an area that I have never written about. Remember, I said I talk about technology and society, but when this opportunity, and in fact, Myla prompted me to write the paper. So if Myla is in the room, Myla, thanks for prompting me. In fact, at one stage, I said to Myla, I'm really busy. And she said, well, see how you go. Because green ICT represents a crucial strategy for aligning technological advancements with environmental sustainability. And these are things that I have come to learn while I was doing this, by focusing on energy reduction, energy efficiency, firstly. Energy efficiency, waste reduction, and responsible resource management, green ICT can help to lower our carbon footprint. And when I say our carbon footprint, I mean the carbon footprint of digital technologies, while fostering innovation and reducing cost. I mean, when I said ChatGPT, we're consuming half a liter of water for every query. Now imagine how problematic that is. So as organizations and governments embrace these practices, the focus is on contributing to a more sustainable future. And it's important for individuals also to do their part and not just rely on organizations and governments. So that's ICT. Now, in closing, thank you to the organizers for having me. It's been a true pleasure. It's good to see the conference come to fruition. And good luck on all your efforts and congratulations on putting up this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Ritesh Chugh and Dr. Suha Bilqis, representing Professor Ayesha Farooq. Was a thought-provoking session. We would like to extend our deepest thanks and for their infallible insight, and of course to all our participants for their engagement and thoughtful questions. This concludes today's program, but there is so much more to come throughout the conference. Tomorrow we are going to have the third session and the fourth station, and stay connected and join the ongoing conversation on social media using the hashtag GreenThink 2024. For any inquiries, feel free to reach to us via email at internationaloffice@apps.uinjkt.ac.id or visit our official website greenthink.uinjkt.ac.id. Thank you very much again for all, and we look forward to seeing you in upcoming session. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. And before everyone goes, look, one of the things, and I'm quite active on social media, I see that people were a bit shy to turn their cameras on. So if people are comfortable, and for those of you who are comfortable, just turn your cameras on so we can take a screenshot of whoever was here, if not anything else, and only turn them on if you're comfortable.
Yes, I would like to invite all of you to turn on your camera. So we are going to have a screenshot of our participation today. Again, I would like to invite all of you to turn on your camera. So we'll have a nice documentation to be documented.
See, that looks so good.
Yes.
It looks so good. I mean, I wish everyone had them on from the start. I was reluctant to ask because it's always good to have faces,
Yes, that's right.
It's
There's
Thank you, Suha.
There's still a few more people. People, please turn your cameras on. You're all looking smart and good, so don't be shy. You can come back and revisit this photo on my LinkedIn. It might come up there. So
yes, so you can have a proof that you attend this conference, and you can send the photo to Ritesh via the social media, and then you can say that I would like to pursue you as my supervisor for PhD.
yeah, no, Dvinanta, I totally agree. Sometimes bandwidth issues are always there, but like I said, we try and do the best of what we can. And when I started, one of the things I said, the good thing about virtual conferences is we are doing our bit for the environment. Personally, I like that physical face-to-face connection, because when you have that physical face-to-face connection in a conference, it just leads to more valuable outputs. But in terms of the environment, I think this ties in quite well. All right, so I'm going to take a screenshot now. So if everyone can just smile.
Please smile.
1, 2, sorry. 1, 2, 3. Done. Thank you, everyone, and good luck, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Prof. Ritesh.
Yes, bye.
Thank you, everyone, once again.
Thank you,
And we look
everyone.
forward to seeing you in upcoming sessions. And before that, I'm going to play one more time about GreenThink conference.